Welcome. I'm Barbara Call, Senior Director of Content Strategy and Operations at IDG, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webcast titled Digital Transformation. Research shows how industry leaders navigate change, and brought to you by IDG, Oxford Economics, and NTT Data Services. I have two speakers joining me today. First up is Eric Clark, Chief Digital and Strategy Officer at NTT Data Services. Welcome, Eric. Tell us a little bit about your work.
Hi, Barbara. Thanks for having me. So as you mentioned, I'm the Chief Digital and Strategy Officer at NTT Data. So what that means is I spend a lot of my time focused on making sure we have the right capabilities and the right offerings to take to our clients and to our prospects. So we do that by several different ways. One is investing and spending R&D dollars on building out capabilities. The second is through M&A. We're very active in the M&A space, constantly looking for the right companies that we can acquire and bring in and add new skills and new capabilities. And then the third is through our venture capital company. We've got a company called NTT VC that we work very closely with to really identify the next trends and the top companies that are coming up and really creating innovative ways to tackle today's business challenges.
Great. Nice to have you. Also joining me today is Ed Cohen, Editorial Director and Technology Practice Lead with Oxford Economics. Welcome, Ed. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Barbara. And hey, Eric, it's good to be with you again. So as you said, I'm the Editorial Director. I'm the Technology Practice Lead for the Thought Leadership Group at Oxford Economics. We're a small global boutique consulting firm that is based in the UK. And we do independent research, third-party research for top-tier clients like NTT Data. My role as editorial director, I oversee all of our deliverables, our research programs. I work closely with our economists, and I'm also the tech practice lead. And those two roles are really hard to separate because tech touches everything. And even our projects, say in finance, they have a strong tech sub-theme, if not theme. So the digital transformation story is one we've been following for a long time. I've followed it for most of my career as a journalist before this, even before we called it digital transformation. And this is our third or fourth program with NTT Data, and we're very excited about this one. It really brings together a lot of the themes that we work on, and happy to be here to talk about the research today.
All right, great. Nice to have you. So I want to start by painting a picture, the world of today's business leaders. Disruption overload and transformation fatigue have remained constant. Continued uncertainty around the global pandemic, combined with social unrest, natural disasters, supply chain challenges, workforce shortages, and cybersecurity attacks, forces leaders to constantly revisit or even remake their strategic plans. In the face of all this disruption, though, one familiar constant remains: technology. Digital tools continue to advance and help reimagine how businesses and our world operate. Investment in both foundational and emerging technology is still what provides organizations an opportunity to survive and thrive in the future. So Eric, my first question is for you. NTT Data Services conducted a large research project with Oxford Economics. Why is it valuable for industry leaders to understand how their peers are approaching digital transformation?
Well, first of all, clearly over the last 2 years especially, technology has advanced in a very condensed time frame and changed how consumers and employees interact. So why is it valuable for leaders to understand what their peers are doing? Because they've got to understand the competition. And not only is it valuable for them to understand their peers, but it's also valuable for them to understand the drivers behind what their peers are doing. And then finally, it's also valuable for them to understand what customers in other industries are doing. And the reason for that is we often see a lot of these digital technologies start in one industry and go to another. So the way we've done this research is it gives people a very clear insight into what's happening, why is it happening, and what industry is it happening in. And our findings show a very clear group in our sample that are seeing really positive business outcomes. And that can be from a financial performance through customer satisfaction and productivity. So we really think this research can provide a blueprint and kind of a path forward, even with the constant disruption that's happening across all of these industries.
Okay, great. So Ed, over to you. Tell us a little bit about the specifics of the research.
Sure. So we went out in Q2 and Q3 of 2021 and did a survey of 1,000 business line and IT execs, senior executives, 90% of them in the United States, 10% in Canada. And so I say we're an independent research firm. We obviously work closely with our clients. We didn't just randomly choose some industries to focus on. We worked closely with NTT DATA to say, who are y'all most interested in right now? It's a broad spectrum of industries reflecting NTT DATA's client base, but we did focus particularly on manufacturing, healthcare, financial services, and public sector. And then we drilled down a bit there so that, say, payer and provider were broken out for healthcare. So we tried to get granular there. And our intent here, as Eric said, is really to show other executives what's going on in the world among their peers. And our elevator pitch, I'd say, is we're a best practices shop. We want to come out of these surveys and these reports and say, here's what the people who are getting the best results are doing. Not just what they're saying, not just what they want to do, but here's what they put in and here's what they're getting out.
All right, thank you. So in reviewing the research, it's clear that disruptive change, whether it's technology or policy and regulations, is coming from all angles, and business leaders really face a lot of pressure. So Eric, tell us about the key themes that you see emerging from the results.
Yeah, and as the title of the research probably indicates, disruption continues to be top of mind for leaders. And our research found that 77% of organizations are not prepared for what's next. And truthfully, given the last 2 years between the pandemic, social unrest, and natural disasters, and now all the supply chain challenges that we're seeing, it was really quite surprising to see how many companies are not proactively preparing for what feels like constant disruption.
I agree that it's surprising, or it's a little alarming. You can't prepare for the next disruption by definition, right? You don't know. If you know what's coming, it's probably not that disruptive. But what we've seen is an atmosphere where constant change and upheaval, it's not just driven by the next startup out of Silicon Valley. It could be climate change. It could be on the government side. Certainly could be a global pandemic. And you need a culture around innovation. And that's what surprised me, Eric, is that people understand the value of innovation, but they don't really prepare for the future by having a culture of innovation and a habit of innovation. So that would be one of the best practices, I think, is to accept change as a constant, disruption as a constant, and build your management style and your investment style around that.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And where we did see companies in the research that are acting in those manners and are very agile and innovative, they saw great opportunities and they saw some of the disruption as areas for growth. And we saw some really interesting results in the minority of cases.
It's so important to bear that in mind, and not just to be able to get out of bed in the morning. But so much of this stuff sounds so dire, right? We're all prepared for disruption across every part of our lives, but it is opportunity. And that's not just happy talk, and that's not just, business school talk. That's reality. And the people who are preparing and who adjust to this are going to thrive. And so are the people they employ and their customers. It's not just about the corporate bottom line, although obviously it's about the corporate bottom line. It's about a healthier economy and a healthier society.
Yeah, exactly. And another theme that we saw come out of the research, which also ties to a lot of recent headlines, is that organizations are not often prioritizing their employees. And what we see is financial performance and customer satisfaction are two of the top focus areas for leaders, which seems somewhat expected. However, employee engagement and retention was actually last, with only 16% of respondents identifying it as a priority. So, now when we see all the headlines around the Great Recession or the Great Resignation, I'm sorry, many organizations are really struggling with the costs associated with high turnover, and it appears that they're really struggling to quantify the connection between the positive employee experience and attracting and retaining top talent. And we really see that as not only, again, a big challenge, but also an opportunity for the companies that are doing this right.
Absolutely. We see talent as the differentiator. If you can go to an NTT Data and get the tech help you need, right, get the digital infrastructure, then what can you do beyond that in your own shop? And that answer is often going to come down to your people, how you treat them, how they treat the customers, and that sense of buy-in. So people understand the value of talent. It's been a hot topic, but again, the disconnect between saying they get it and what they actually do, it's disturbingly wide.
Yeah, fully agree. And, this survey and this research that we've done, we've committed to it being an annual survey, and we're going to do this every year. So I'll be really interested to see how this changes when we do this again next time. I hope that 16% that identifies this as a priority will be much higher the next time we do this.
Right. So given the importance of this human element, why does it get overlooked? Eric, what do you think?
Well, I think customers are always top of mind, right? And during a period of hyper growth around digital capabilities, I think the digital native companies, the true born in the cloud companies, have pushed expectations even higher. And this really holds true in industries that were maybe previously not as affected by customer whims, maybe like public sector and healthcare. But what we're seeing now is even those industries that weren't as affected, they're becoming effective. And I think a big reason for that is all of the employees in those companies are also consumers, and they're used to the way they live and work in their consumer life, and they want to bring that to work with them. They see that technology makes it easier to do things at home. Why can't it make it easier to do things at work? And that all leads to the war for talent, right? And it's all tied to this Great Resignation. People want to go work in the places that are leveraging technology and making it easier to do their jobs through the use of digital tools and technologies.
Yeah, the consumerization of IT is obviously it's a huge thing in how much we enjoy our jobs, how well we're able to do our jobs. I do think, as a survey writer and editor, that there are ways to ask questions. We want to drill down on some of the focus on employees. Well, there's been a ton of focus on employees in the last couple of years in things like allowing people to work from home and providing them with the technologies and the support to work from home. That may not be incorporated into the more formal culture of employee management and benefit. And in a year or two or three, it probably will be. So one of the things we're going to see as the decade goes on, obviously technology adoption and things like that. But I also think that things that we don't even recognize now as huge cultural markers for a company, where you let your people work, how you support them, are going to be baked in by 2023.
Yeah. It seems pretty logical that building a workplace where employees actually feel their needs are met would be pretty obvious, right? And it would be a pretty obvious indicator of positive employee experiences. But based on the research, it appears that a lot of executives really haven't gotten that message. Only 1/3 of respondents say that culture is not a primary component, is a primary component of employee satisfaction, and only about 40% say that effective communication and a strong organizational purpose are among the most important elements of employee satisfaction and engagement. So again, I think some surprising results and a long way to go there.
I was just going to say, we've done a lot of research over the years that shows the basics, and this is shocking, I know, is pay people fairly. It doesn't mean pay somebody in a public sector job like somebody on Wall Street. It means pay them fairly in their own life, according to their own industry, and treat them well. What we've seen is less important in terms of culture are the sort of things, the Silicon Valley TV show things, the ping pong table and the popcorn machine. We all love ping pong and popcorn, but at the end of the day, we want an end of the day. right? We don't, a lot of those things are built around keeping you there. People want to be treated well, and I think that gets overthought sometimes. How can we treat people well other than giving them safe, fair work conditions? Well, that's probably what you need to start with.
Yep.
Right. That leads right into my next question, which is, as we talk about these experiences for customers and employees, how can organizations better position themselves to create loyalty among those groups?
Well, if technology is the engine of digital transformation, data is the fuel. And strategic decision-making is increasingly driven by insights gleaned from data. So I'll share some more data from our survey. Nearly half of the respondents say that information highly influences their supply chain efforts, customer interactions, and process design. But the work of becoming truly data-centric is hard, and it's getting harder. More than 2/3 of the respondents say that managing these digital resources is becoming increasingly difficult. Respondents are mostly confident about their data direction, with more than 3/4 saying they have an overarching strategy for making use of data. So what that means is the companies that came across as leaders in our survey are truly reaping the benefits right now, and they're 21% more likely to have invested in predictive analytics.
And if you live in an era of disruption and rapid change, you've got to get ahead of what your customers need. It doesn't mean you have a crystal ball, but it means you quickly say, wow, this pandemic really is driving delivery services. And then you start to get to some of the more nuanced ideas like, well, this guy likes it when we say we'll bundle the deliveries and give them all on Wednesday because it's greener, and we'll actually give him $1 back if he does that, right? So it's understanding what people actually want in the real world, which is a changed world. There's been so much change to what customers want and need. Companies can be forgiven for not having known it the next day, but the day after. The example I like to use is both my 87-year-old mom and my 88-year-old mother-in-law have correctly used the phrase supply chain in casual conversation with me recently. When you're out in the real world and these business issues have become mainstream like that, that tells you something about where your customers are. So do you know that, or do you just hear it about my mother-in-law?
So data, the other thing is data helps implement technology more effectively, right?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. So data is the key for successful digital transformation because it drives everything around it, from the AI, the machine learning, to making use of cloud and ERP systems. In fact, most respondents have either already made or they are making significant investments in what we would think of as some of the foundational table stakes technologies. And additionally, those investments are paying off, with half of the respondents reporting improved financial performance, growth, and return on investment, and nearly 3/4 are reporting gains in customer satisfaction. And I'd say one of the biggest ones is really cloud. So, it's become a foundational technology, with organizations investing almost equally in public and private cloud. Greater than 50% of the respondents are investing in public and private cloud. And nearly 2/3 say that it's already delivering financial performance gains. So we're also seeing emerging technologies. So things like AI and data analytics that are either not yet on the radar or they're still experiencing challenges with it. So leaders demonstrating the value here, for example, are 41% more likely to have invested in IoT and 40% in mobile apps.
So Eric, you talk about the way the results are going to change over the decade. We've segmented the technologies into, as you say, foundational, established, and emerging. So Eric, you and I are old enough to remember Nick Carr's book, The Big Switch. It came out, in 2008, saying this cloud thing is real. Well, now it's a foundational technology, right? Everything we're talking about lives in the cloud or is built on it or uses the massive data flows in the cloud. And mobile is another one. The iPhone is 12, 13 years old, and it is now foundational, the smartphone, to how we work. And then you have that layer of what we're calling established technologies. They were yesterday's emerging technologies. And then out there in the quantum computing land, we have things that the use case isn't there or the technology is not mature or whatever. But by the time we wrap this thing up, those may be established or even foundational. And so one of the things that keeps this job exciting is that generational shift of technology. So we really did see that digital acceleration during the pandemic that you mentioned earlier, and the maturing of certain technologies. Others, I mean, when Mark Zuckerberg renames his company Meta, suddenly we're talking about the metaverse. There's your AR, VR, augmented reality. There's such constant change in this technology maturity. And that's one of the things we're going to be watching with great interest over the years ahead, from last year to this year to 5 years from now.
But it's key, no matter what technology we're talking about, that's tied back to business results.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's not being tied to business results, it's probably going to be difficult for companies to continue to invest. And in fact, in this research, we asked executives to identify both realized and expected outcomes as a result of the investments they're making in these digital technologies. And the results really fell into three categories. One was improving financial performance. And we saw a lot around public cloud and advanced automation, AI, but also some cybersecurity and analytics and IoT in there. And then the second was really around customer satisfaction. So a lot of projects around CRM, conversational AI, mobile apps, and again, cloud. And then finally, the third big category that we saw was around reducing risk. So things like cybersecurity, again, public cloud fell into this one, workplace technologies that allowed safe working from anywhere, and also machine learning, RPA, ERP, and predictive analytics.
So you got to pay your bills, you got to pay your people. That's what businesses do. Public sector has to spend public money wisely. And yet, when we do our best practices cut, our leader cut, we tend not to include financial performance as a parameter. There are a lot of ways you can make money, right? Sometimes it's just a resourcing issue. You sell something that's scarce. That may not be sustainable. So what we look at, as Eric said earlier, is we look at behaviors. What are you doing? What are you investing in? Are you pleasing your customers? Are you getting productivity out of technology? And then we take that cut and we match it up against the financial performance metrics we get. And what we find with stunning consistency is that people who are good, companies who are good at those best practice behaviors, are the ones making the most money. Now, coincidences and causality, our economists have beat that into my head. We need 3 years of time series data to really show cause and effect. In other words, it could be you have a lot of money, so you buy the good tech. But Eric, I can't wait for 2023, 2024, when we can really start to say these specific behaviors are the drivers of profitability, of revenue growth, of customer satisfaction. So we have really strong signals now, and we can get more and more specific the more data we get. And there's that word again, right? Data makes the world go round.
Yep.
Was there anything about these findings that surprised either of you?
Yeah, definitely. And in fact, we mentioned a few in the beginning that were maybe a little bit surprising in a not so positive kind of way, things that we expected to see more of, but maybe a few things that were more positive surprises. A lot of focus on mobile applications and conversational AI and virtual assistants, which is really good to see. Again, big focus and high adoption of both private and public cloud. But maybe the most notable is that, there's a clear connection that innovation is central to enterprise transformation. And because of that, there's still significant opportunity for improvement in a lot of the clients that we surveyed. So, innovation by definition is proactive. It's bringing new ideas to market, and nearly half of the companies that responded still responded in more of a reactive market and viewed a lot of these areas as a nice to have rather than critical for survival. So again, I think big opportunity for for growth and improved use of some of these digital technologies.
Yeah, I don't know if it was surprising because we see it a lot. People aren't that good at data yet. We did a big study for NTT Data last year on the data economy and managing it, making use of it, making sure it's the right data, securing it. These are huge challenges. So sometimes we can sound judgmental, when we say they're not that good at it. It's hard, right? These are massive data flows. People's privacy is incredibly important. Security is difficult when people are coming for that data all the time with ill intent. So we don't want to judge people. We want to say these are the challenges they're facing. So that wasn't a surprise, but that was a call to action for sure. I think that maybe the lack of innovation is a surprise, or as an innovation focus is a surprise that it wasn't 80% at first blush. But I also think it's really important for people to remember, if you're still here and you're doing okay at the end of this year, at the end of this 2 years, props to you. I think we can look at the numbers and be a little hard on ourselves and on people. So it's not surprising that people have been struggling to keep their employees engaged, to get them what they need, to keep them safe. We look at that and we may say, well, it's surprising you're not doing this other stuff. Well, it'll be surprising if they're not doing it in a couple of years. I think back to that idea of disruption, after what the country and the world and the economy and the people have been through for the last couple of years, it sets the stage for a lot of positive change, but it also requires a lot of change.
So what advice would you offer? What are the key takeaways for moving forward?
Yeah, it's a great question. So, as we were going through the results, and Ed and I had several conversations about this, we kind of centered around three things. One is build confidence, confidence to respond quickly to critical and evolving market demands, and doing that with a secure, agile, and data-driven enterprise. Second was around fostering loyalty by building trusted relationships with hyper-personalized experiences for both customers and employees, and really leaning into the digital technologies that are key to create an empowered work environments. And then finally, the third was driving performance, and doing that through continual process improvement and improving the technology ecosystem that can help create a culture of innovation and reduce technical debt and increase business efficiency and allow easier integration of new products and services.
And of course, each of those three has subcomponents that we could spend another 3 hours talking along. But I like the idea of keeping things fairly high level and saying these are the areas you need to focus on. And what that allows people to do is say, well, we're actually pretty good at this. And then always question your assumptions. We think we're good at this. What did we learn in the last couple of years that showed us we're not as good as we thought we were, or we're not that good going forward by the new rules? So there's so much here. We're not going to cover it in this call. I do hope people will get deep into the report. And there's a ton more information. Eric, we haven't even gotten to this about the variances by industry. Obviously, when we do these global surveys by region, but if you're in banking, what's happening in insurance may not be totally relevant to you, much less healthcare or public sector or manufacturing. So we want to make sure that the people who use this information are getting the specifics that they need. And we do have those reports as well.
Yeah, and then I'd say the last thing, I mentioned it once before, but we have committed to do this type of research annually, and we're excited about the relationship with Oxford Economics and really excited about the results that we got on this one, and look forward to continuing to work with our clients to learn even more about what this data tells us.
All right, great. Thank you, gentlemen. That was very interesting. So all the time we have for today, I'd like to say thank you again to my guests, Eric Clark of NTT Data Services and Ed Cohen of Oxford Economics. And thanks to you, our audience, for joining us. For additional information on this topic, please visit the resources section on your screen. For IDG, Oxford Economics, and NTT Data Services, I'm Barbara Call.